Okay, let's talk about three little letters that can make a whole lot of people, well, pretty nervous. IRS. For a lot of us, the Internal Revenue Service feels like this giant black box, right? Full of confusing forms and deadlines. But what if I told you it's also the financial engine that keeps the entire country running? Today, we are going to open up that box and demystify the whole thing.
So, let's just get right to the heart of it. What does the IRS really do? I mean, beyond just collecting taxes. Turns out its role is way bigger and, honestly, more complex than you might think. We're going to unpack its main jobs, one by one, to show you exactly how this massive system actually works.
All right, here's how we're going to break this all down. First, we'll look at the big picture, the IRS as the country's financial engine. Then, we'll dive into how they collect the money, what happens to all that paperwork, how they make sure the system is fair for everyone, and finally, we'll cover the services and rights you have as a taxpayer. By the end, this whole thing should make a lot more sense. Let's jump in. So first up, let's reframe how we think about the IRS. It's not just a tax agency. It's really the core financial engine of the United States. This is the mechanism that funds pretty much everything, from our highways to our national parks. Now, the official language here is super important. It's called the Federal Tax Authority. That means it's not just one of the tax agencies, it is the tax agency for the whole country. Being under the Treasury Department is what gives it the power to fund the entire federal government. You can almost think of it as the single official collection plate for the whole nation. Okay, so let's move on to their most famous job, collecting all that revenue. This is the part we all interact with, and it is absolutely fundamental to how the government actually operates day to day. I mean, really think about it for a second. Every single public service, from national defense to Social Security, needs money to run. And we're talking about trillions of dollars here. Just in fiscal year 2023, the IRS pulled in over $4.7 trillion. It's a staggering number, but essentially, the taxes they collect are what pay the country's bills. And this really shows you where all that money comes from. While most of us are focused on our individual income tax, that's really just one piece of the puzzle. You've got massive contributions from taxes on business profits and those specific payroll taxes that fund Social Security and Medicare. And then there are things called excise taxes, like the federal tax on gas or tobacco. All of these different streams flow into one giant river of revenue. So, after you've filed your taxes, what happens next? Where does that return actually go? Now we're shifting from collecting money to the huge logistical challenge of processing all that paperwork. Just let that number sink in for a minute. Not thousands, millions. Every single year, the IRS has to process this absolute tidal wave of returns from every person and business that files. It is genuinely one of the largest data processing tasks on the entire planet, and it has to be done with incredible accuracy. And here's a look at that journey. Once your return is received, it goes into a verification stage. This is so important. Automated systems are checking the numbers you reported against the info they got from your employer or your bank. This is why being accurate is key. If there's a mismatch, it gets flagged for an adjustment. And that final step, issuing a refund, is basically the system balancing the books to make sure you only paid what you were supposed to. Okay, for any of this to work, people have to believe the system is fair. And that brings us to the IRS's dual role. They have to help people follow the law, but they also have to make sure everyone is following the same set of rules. It's this constant balancing act between guidance and enforcement. I think this slide shows it perfectly. It's two sides of the exact same coin. On one hand, the IRS puts a ton of effort into giving you the forms, the tools, the publications, everything you need to get it right. But on the other hand, to protect all the honest taxpayers out there, they have to enforce the law when people don't comply. You really can't have one without the other. So what does enforcement actually look like? Well, it's not always some dramatic in-person audit. Most of the time, it starts with an automated letter just pointing out a potential mistake. If that doesn't resolve it, things can escalate to penalties and interest. The big takeaway here is that it's a tiered system. The really serious legal action, that's saved for the most significant cases. Now let's switch gears to something that often gets overlooked. The IRS is also a service agency. Yeah, it's not just about rules and making you pay up. It's also about providing resources and, crucially, protecting your rights as a taxpayer. So the important thing to know is that help is actually available. If you can't pay your tax bill all at once, there are options, like payment plans. And here's something really important. If you ever feel like you're just stuck in the system and can't solve a problem, there's an independent organization inside the IRS called the Taxpayer Advocate Service. Their entire job is to be your voice and help you cut through the red tape. It's a critical safety net.
You know, this really hits the nail on the head.
The tax code spells out your obligations, sure, but the Taxpayer Bill of Rights spells out your protections. The whole system is designed for both of those to exist together.
Whew! We have covered a lot of ground, right? From funding the government to processing millions of returns and protecting taxpayer rights. So let's bring it all together now in one clear, simple summary.
And there it is. 4 key jobs: collecting, processing, refunding, and ensuring everyone plays by the rules. At the end of the day, it's the agency that manages the fundamental financial contract between every single citizen and the country itself.
So, we'll leave you with this final thought to chew on. Now that you understand the mechanics, that this is the engine that funds the country, and that it's built on a system of both rules and rights, does that change how you view your own part in it all come tax season? Something to think about.